Hello, everyone. Miss Debbie here to bring you some holiday stories at this time of year. So, as I promised last week, we had Hanukkah stories, and I still had one more I wanted to squeeze in. So, tonight we're going to start with The Hanukkah Guest by Eric A. Kimmel, illustrated by Giora Carmi. The Hanukkah Guest. This is a pretty popular tale. Sometimes the stories are called The Hanukkah Visitor, or, it's written by a different author, but it's the same premise of a bear that comes to a house and the old lady thinks it's the rabbi. I love this story. Here's the title page, The Hanukkah Guest with the big bear's footprints. Stories are good for this time of year when the nights are quite long and the weather is quite not nice. And here's more footprints. Footprints in the snow. You can see the bare tree at the bottom. Most of the leaves have fallen off of the trees now. Old Bear roused himself from his winter sleep. He yawned a gigantic yawn. Then he stretched himself all over. Finally, he poked his nose outside his den. A soft blanket of deep snow covered the ground. Spring was still many months away. Old Bear wrinkled his nose. What was that delicious smell? It smelled like something to eat, which reminded Old Bear that it had been months since he had eaten anything. Old Bear's empty stomach rumbled. He shook himself all over and then lumbered out of his den to follow the delicious smell. Did you ever get woken up from your sleep just by smelling something yummy? Bubba Braina took the last potato latke from the pan and put it in the oven with the others. The latkes would stay warm in there until her guests arrived. Bubba Braina was 97 years old and did not hear or see as well as she used to, but she still made the best potato latkes in the village. Every year at Hanukkah time, all her friends made their way through the snow to her little house on the edge of the forest. How they loved those latkes. Bubba Braina always made plenty, but tonight, on the first night of Hanukkah, she made twice as many as usual. Tonight was special. Tonight, the rabbi was coming. And there she is, making her latkes as we look in through the window of her little house. So, I love potato latkes. I can't wait to make some and have them with applesauce. Bubba Braina put on a clean apron and set the table. She filled a bowl with nuts for the dreidel game. Kitzel the cat rubbed against her ankles as she bustled around the kitchen. One last chore, the candles for the menorah. Bubba Braina went to get them. Just then she heard a knock at the door. So here she is. There's the menorah. There's the golden smell, right? Here's the golden smell. And all of a sudden she's startled with the knock at the door, and the candles kind of got shaken out of her hand. These are the nuts in the bowl for the dreidel game. It wasn't exactly a knock, though. It was more like a soft thumping. My guest must be early, Bubba Braina said. She opened the door. The cat hissed and dived under the table. Why, Rabbi, how nice to see you, Bubba Braina exclaimed. Grumph, growled the old bear. And happy Hanukkah to you, too. Please come in. Old Bear lumbered into the house. He shook the snow from his fur. And because his paws are soft, the pads are soft, So when he knocked at the door, it sounded like a thumping rather than a knocking. And there's her old eyes, not seeing very well. By the way, this is just a story. Don't go near a bear ever. Don't open a door to let a bear in ever. This is just a story. I'll take your coat, Rabbi. My, how thick it is. It must be very cold outside. Bubba Braina tugged at Old Bear's fur. Growl, Old Bear roared. Oh, you prefer to leave your coat on? Well, that's all right. It is a bit chilly in here. Come into the kitchen, please. I've set the table for a lovely Hanukkah evening. Old Bear followed Bubba Braina into the kitchen. The delicious smells made his nose twitch. Rumph! Thank you, Rabbi. How kind of you to say that. The latkes will taste even better than they smell. So in this picture, you can still see the golden smell of the latkes coming from the kitchen. Here's the cat, startled with his tail up. Old Bear followed his nose to the oven. Roar! Rabbi, I'm surprised at you. You know we don't eat until we light the menorah. Grrr! That's all right. I know you were teasing. I'll light the candles. Will you say the blessings? Rumph! Bubba Braina struck a match and lit the shamus candle, and then she lit one for the first night. Old Bear muttered and growled. Rumph, growl, roo. Who has kept us, preserved us, and sustained us to this time? Oh, Rabbi, you say the blessings so beautifully. Bubba Braina pulled out a chair. Old Bear sat down. Let's play dreidel. I have some nuts we can play with. Old Bear's nose twitched. He cracked a nut in his teeth. Rabbi, you won't have any nuts for the game if you eat them all. Roar, growled Old Bear. Don't worry, I have more nuts if you need them. Bubba Braina gave the dreidel a spin. Old Bear sniffed at the little top as it whirled around. It stopped on the letter Nun. Nothing. We spin again. Bubba Braina spun the dreidel once more. This time it stopped on the letter Kimmel. I win. Bubba Braina swept the nuts into her apron. Roar! Old Bear growled. He wanted those nuts. Don't be angry, Rabbi. It's only a game. Here. She tossed him a nut. Old Bear caught it in his paws, cracked it handily, and then begged for more. No, Rabbi, no more nuts. It's time for dinner. Old Bear snuffled and grumbled. Bubba Braina opened the oven door and took out a platter piled high with steaming potato latkes. Old Bear's nose twitched as she set them on the table. Do you prefer your latkes with sour cream or jam? Oh, I never even thought of that. He's still smelling the latkes. See the smell, the golden smell. In real life, we can't see a smell. Roar, Old Bear growled. Jam, I thought so. Bubba Braina smeared 5 big latkes with jam and stacked them on Old Bear's plate. Old Bear snuffled with pleasure as he gobbled the latkes down. Bubba Braina laughed. You should use a fork. You have jam all over your beard. She wet a towel and wiped Old Bear's face. I must tell you, Rabbi, you eat just like a bear. Grrr! I'm as hungry as a bear, so I eat like one. I can see that. And Bubba Braina chuckled. And there he is with raspberry jam all over his tongue and all over his fur. Here he is clawing at the latkes. Old Bear ate and ate until all the latkes were gone. He licked jam and sour cream from his muzzle and his paws. Then Old Bear began to feel drowsy. He yawned. His great head flopped on Bubba Braina's lap. Rabbi, you're sleepy. Who wouldn't be after such a meal? All the latkes are gone. It's time to go home. But before you leave, I have a Hanukkah present for you. Bubba Braina took out a red woolen scarf from the cupboard. She wrapped it around Old Bear's neck. This scarf will keep you warm on the coldest nights. I knitted it myself. Grrr! Old Bear licked Bubba Braina's face. Bubba Braina blushed. A rabbi at my age? Old Bear shuffled to the door. It was time to return to his den. He felt very sleepy. Rumph, he growled as he ambled off into the night. He turned around one more time before disappearing into the forest. Rumph. Good night to you too, Rabbi. Happy Hanukkah. And here he is, ambling off into the woods with his red scarf. Bubba Braina was washing the dishes when she heard another knock. I wonder who that is. Shalom, Bubba Braina. Her friends and neighbors stood at the door, wishing her a happy Hanukkah. Shalom, everybody, Bubba Braina cried. How nice to see you. Please come in. I'm sorry. I don't have any more latkes. The rabbi came by. He ate them all. And here she is, answering the door to all her friends from the village. Bubba Braina, don't you recognize me? It was the rabbi. Here he is. Look, he's the same color as the bear. The rabbi couldn't have eaten the latkes, everyone said. He was in the synagogue with us the whole time. Bubba Braina scratched her head in bewilderment. Something strange is happening here. Rabbi, I think there is an imposter around. He looks like you. He talks like you. He even has your beard. Just then, Esther and David, Bubba Braina's 2 grandchildren, cried, Come look! Everyone ran to the kitchen to see what was wrong. They found the floor covered with bear tracks. So again, here's the rabbi. Same color, same furry coat as the bear, same furry beard. And there's her grandchildren pointing to the bear tracks. A bear, and I thought it was the rabbi. Bubba Braina had to sit down. Soon she began to giggle. That was a very clever bear, or a very foolish Bubba Braina. Ah, well, let the bear have a happy Hanukkah. I had a happy Hanukkah too, and so will you, my dear friends. David, go bring some potatoes up from the cellar. Esther, get my grater and bowl. Everybody has to help. You too, Rabbi. But I promise, soon there will be latkes for everyone. There's the bear footprints. And here they are. She's grating the potatoes. Everybody's helping. Deep in the forest, Old Bear slumbered in his den. His stomach was full of potato latkes. The warm woolen scarf was wrapped snugly around his neck. Pleasant dreams, Old Bear, and happy Hanukkah. Isn't that the greatest story? It's one of my favorite stories. You know, I only read my favorite stories. So there's no sense wasting time on stories that I don't like. I don't think we've read this one. This is called Olive, the Other Reindeer. I like this book because look at the colors. Look at her name. Her name is Olive, and it's green, which we call olive green. It's not bright green or emerald green or forest green. It's olive green. So the illustrator did a good job with this book. Olive, I just love the pictures. Olive, the other reindeer. Now, if you sing Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, you'll know there's a line in it that goes, all of the other reindeer. All of the other reindeer. But Olive thinks they're saying Olive, the other reindeer. This is written by Vivian Walsh and illustrated by Otto Seibold. Every day, Olive took her daily dog walk. Olive is a dog. Winter, spring, summer, or fall. Today was a winter's day. It was the holidays. There was music playing outdoors. People were singing along. All of the other reindeer. Olive was too shy to sing. She hummed. And here she is walking down the street. She's a small dog, so she's closer to the sidewalk and people's feet. You could see store window with toys and people carrying packages. And here's where a loudspeaker on the sidewalk is playing Christmas music. All of the other reindeer, or at least holiday music. Back at her doghouse, Olive was wrapping presents and listening to the radio. She heard that same song again. The song went, all of the other reindeer. And Olive sang, Olive, the other reindeer. Olive, the reindeer, said Olive. I thought I was a dog. I must be a reindeer. It was the time of year when all reindeer reported to the North Pole to help Santa Claus. Olive put down her scissors carefully and marched out the door. So here she is. She's wrapping her presents and listening to the radio, to the song on the radio. There's her little doghouse. Okay, she took one bus. There she is on the bus. And then two buses. The second bus, that's called the Polar Express. Oh, does a bus go to the North Pole? And she got there just in time. Santa was checking his list for the second time. Elves were busy helping the reindeer and loading the sleigh with presents for all of the good girls and boys. Everyone was getting ready to go. There's Santa checking his list. The elves are loading the bag of toys on, and there are the reindeer getting their harnesses on. Olive took her place. Santa noticed that there was a little dog in the lineup. Santa knew a lot about dogs. For instance, they can't fly. But as it was time to go, he decided to give Olive a chance. Comet, the biggest reindeer, used a piece of extra ribbon to make sure Olive was tied in safe and tight. And now they were ready to go. So here she is. She's trying to put the collar on, so big. And here is Comet tying the ribbon around Olive. Olive was surprised. It was so easy to fly. Here is Santa with the toys and the reindeer and Olive dangling from her ribbon, and she found it so easy to fly. The other reindeer were very curious about the new helper. They looked at Olive so much, they weren't watching where they were going. And here they are, because she's flying underneath them, so they're looking down. Uh-oh, what happens when you don't look where you're going? Crash! They flew smack into the top of a too tall tree. Oh dear, said Santa. My sleigh is stuck in this tree. I'll have to cut it free. Olive clung to the side of the tree. She tried to fly up to help Santa, but she couldn't fly. She climbed up slowly and started chewing. Chewing sticks was something Olive could do well. "Thank you, Olive," said Santa Claus as they got back on their way. So she chewed the branches so that they could come down from the tree. They had not traveled far when Olive's nose began to twitch. Olive smelled trouble. It was the smell of gumdrop candies as they fell from the sleigh. Drop, drop, drop. Santa barked, and Olive knew what to do. He steered the reindeer down and around so that all of the gumdrops fell, plop, 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 back into the toy sack. And here are the gumdrops falling down. Do gumdrops have a smell? Oh, they smell a little bit sweet like sugar. And here he is catching the gumdrops in the bag. Gumdrops, I don't know if they have gumdrops, but it's like gummy bears. That's what gumdrops are like. We were so lucky to not lose a single gumdrop, thought Olive. And then she heard a strange sound. It was a musical note. It went, ee. She spun around on her string to see the night sky filled with falling flutes. Olive had to howl louder than the wind instruments. This was not music to Santa's ears. First gumdrops and now flutes, thought Santa. That tree must have torn a hole in my sled. Prepare for an emergency landing, Santa instructed. And there's the flutes or recorders. And there's Olive still tied on with the ribbon. The sleigh landed in a snowy field full of flutes. Luckily, Olive was very good at fetching sticks. It is something dogs love to do. Before Santa had finished patching the hole in the sleigh, Olive had returned each and every flute back to the sack. Ho, 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 said Santa. We're ready to go. And here are the flutes sticking in the snow, and Olive is grabbing the flutes, and they're all back in the sack. They were running late now, but after a while, all the good children received their presents, and Santa and his team headed home. And you could see in the little window, those children are sleeping all snug in their beds. And Santa is heading home, and Olive is still dangling from the ribbon. So cute. They were almost home when they got caught in the dreaded North Pole fog. The reindeer slowed down until it was only the breeze that moved them along. The fog was thick as a pillow. It made everyone feel sleepy. You know, in the wintertime, we get a lot of fog as well, because fog is actually moisture from the snow or the rain. So when temperature turns a little bit warm, it gets foggy because the snow and the rain, come up into the air and turn into fog. Then Santa remembered something about dogs. They are excellent smellers. Olive, I'd hate to be late for breakfast this year, he said. Mrs. Claus has planned a parade of cookies. You can almost smell them, can't you? Olive could smell the cookies. Olive, won't you guide my sleigh this morning? Asked Santa. Olive moved to the front of the reindeer. And here is Santa in the fog. Olive is in the fog, and Santa is telling Olive about the cookies. Thanks to Olive's nose and Mrs. Claus's baking, they made it all the way back to the North Pole. All of the elves sang out a cheer. Hooray, hooray! Santa and the reindeer and the little doggy are back. And here's the little doggy on top of the reindeer head, guiding the way. And here's Santa's house. Looks like a gingerbread castle, doesn't it? Back at the North Pole, it was a glorious morning. After eating lots of good food, it was time to open presents. The reindeer got jump ropes and the elves got toy trains. Santa reached into his toy sack. There was just one present left. It was for Olive. It was her very own set of reindeer antlers, and they fit perfectly. Then everyone went outside to play reindeer games. And here is Santa with Mrs. Claus giving Olive her very own reindeer ears. And then they're playing reindeer games, which is jump rope. I love this book. What's not to like about a funny book, right? Let's do one more story and then I will post this and you will have them for your very own. Our next book is also a Christmas story. It's called Tiny Reindeer by Naylor-Ballesteros. And here's Tiny Reindeer standing among other reindeer whose hooves are so big. So a book like this, when it has only the author's name, that means the author wrote it and illustrated it. So here's beautiful, beautiful illustration. The house is on the hill, and here is a little girl putting a letter into the mailbox. Tiny Reindeer. Tiny Reindeer was just like any other reindeer, but with one big difference. He was very, very tiny. He wasn't just smaller than the others. He felt different too, and never more so than at one particular time of year, Christmas time. So here, as you can see, are the legs of a regular reindeer. And Tiny Reindeer, he's so small, he couldn't even eat those carrots. The carrots are bigger than he is. Poor Tiny Reindeer. As Christmas Eve came nearer, the big stamping, snorting reindeer were busy helping Santa get ready for the most important night of the year. Ho, 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 let's get to it. There are jobs to be done, boomed Santa as he fed his herd. Ho, ho, humph, sighed Tiny Reindeer. I wish there was a job I could do, even just a tiny one. So here's Santa in his pouch. He has carrots, and he's feeding the reindeer carrots. And there's Tiny Reindeer. Every year, Tiny Reindeer tried very hard to find a way to help. But whatever he did went wrong. He got tangled in the reins of harnesses. He fell into the water bowls, and he had to be rescued from the sticky tape when he tried to wrap the presents. So here he is, tangled in the harness, fell into the water bowl, tangled up in sticky tape. On the day before Christmas Eve, Santa spoke to Tiny Reindeer. Why don't you have a look in the mailroom? You might be able to help there, he suggested kindly. There's one last little pile of children's letters to sort. Tiny Reindeer wasn't so sure. A little pile. Tiny ended up squashed under an enormous mess of mixed up Christmas letters. But as he struggled to wriggle free, a letter with a reindeer drawn on it caught his eye. It was from a little girl. Maybe this one's for me, he thought. And here he is. There he is, squashed under this immense pile of letters. Against all the rules, Tiny sneaked it away with him to his quiet little corner of the stables and read it. And this is what it said. Dear Santa, there is just one thing in all the world I would like to have for Christmas, and it is a tiny reindeer to go with my tiny wooden sleigh. It's a special sleigh because my granddad made it for me. He wanted to make a reindeer too, but couldn't in the end, so my sleigh won't ever fly anywhere. I know reindeer are really big, but I only need a very tiny one so that we can all fly together like you and Santa and your big reindeers. Love. And you can't read the signature. But Tiny Reindeer came up with a plan. And here he is reading the letter. The next morning, everyone was busy getting ready for takeoff, and as nighttime fell, Santa took the reins of his magnificent sleigh, harnessing the puffing reindeer for the long journey ahead. Nobody noticed a tiny passenger leaping into a hiding place on the back of Santa's sleigh, a secret voyager on a special mission. And here they are getting ready. Santa's hooking the reindeer up to the sleigh. And there's Tiny. He's leaping into a hiding space in the back of the sleigh. Throughout the long and snowy night, Santa's sleigh flew across the sky, crossing oceans and covering continents. Tiny Reindeer stayed hidden until finally the moment he'd waited for had arrived. He took a deep breath and leapt from the sleigh into the freezing air as Santa and his galloping herd disappeared into the darkness. He took a leap. It's snowing out, but look at Santa. Santa doesn't miss a trick. He sees you when you're sleeping. He knows when you're awake. From a bag on Tiny Reindeer's back ballooned a perfectly sized paper parachute made from the little girl's letter. He aimed for the chimney of one particular house, and whoosh! He plunged through the hole, tumbling into the fireplace below, which led to a hallway and an enormous staircase. Here he is with his paper letter parachute. Then he hit the chimney. He's going down the chimney. At the bottom of the chimney, and looking into a door and sees the staircase. It's an awfully big staircase. Oh no, thought Tiny Reindeer. The stairs were too far, they were far too big for him. Tired and cold, he couldn't climb the first one, let alone all of the others. And he didn't even know if he had landed at the right house. As he lowered his head and tears came to his eyes, Tiny Reindeer began to wonder if he'd made a big mistake. And here he is. The poor crumpled letter is still attached to him, and he's just standing there. Suddenly there was a noise in the room behind him, a crash and bash, huffing and a puffing, and then footsteps moving across the floor. Tiny Reindeer tried to hide in the shadows, keeping quiet and still. But a huge figure stepped into the hallway and looked straight down at him. Santa! A good thing I was keeping an eye on you, Tiny Reindeer, he whispered. It looks like you could do with some help. Poor Tiny Reindeer. Poor little thing. Santa carefully took off the paper parachute and folded it into his coat pocket. Then, dusting off the soot and dirt, he carried Tiny Reindeer upstairs to a bedroom where the little girl was fast asleep. A beautiful tiny wooden sleigh sat right beside her. She didn't hear the door open, nor did she see Santa tiptoe across the floor. She didn't even stir when Tiny Reindeer leaped softly onto her pillow. "Goodbye, my little friend. I must be on my way," Santa whispered. "I'll try to drop in and see you next year." And then he was gone. So here is Santa tiptoeing into the little girl's room with Tiny Reindeer. And here she is sleeping in her bed, and the little wooden sleigh is right there. Tiny Reindeer settled down, warm and cozy, on the pillow. Exhausted after his adventure, he wondered what Christmas morning might bring, and eventually he yawned and closed his eyes. The little girl remained fast asleep, dreaming excitedly of a tiny sleigh. A tiny reindeer. "My tiny reindeer," she cried out when she woke on Christmas morning. Tiny stood proudly on the little girl's hands and knew he had finally found where he belonged, and with the most beautiful sleigh he'd ever seen, handmade to fit him perfectly. His plan had worked, with just a tiny bit of help from Santa. Look how excited she is to see Tiny. And then here's her parents watching from the house, and she's going outside to play with her tiny reindeer. Because you play with your toys on Christmas morning, right? I love that book. Anyway, thanks for letting me share some holiday stories with you, and stay tuned for another set of holiday stories, which I'm looking forward to share. All right, now tuck in and maybe grab a book of your own and enjoy.